Hilchas Malveh V'Loveh Perek Shishi. Now we learned this Ribas Deiraisa, which is Ribas Ktsutza, and Ribas which is not Ktsutza is not Deiraisa. Now Ribas Ktsutza would mean, like the Rambam's tight choice, that you lend someone money, either you lend them money or you lend them paytas, and you make up with him that besides the money that you lent him that he has to return to you, he also has to return you something more, either more money or also more paytas. So in other words, if you gave him a certain amount of money, you made up with him that he should give you back more money, so that's Ribas Ktsutza. If you made up that he should give you back more money plus paytas, that's also Ribas Ktsutza. Now there's about paytas. If you give him a certain amount of paytas and you make up with him, he should give you back more paytas. So that's Ribas Ktsutza. If you made up with him, you should give him back the same amount of paytas plus money. That's also Ribas Ktsutza. Now, the thing that you're adding to the amount that you borrowed and that you're paying back has to be something which is definitely a gain for the person that lent the money or lent the paytas. For example, when a person tells someone he's giving him a certain amount of money, and the ribis is going to be that he's going to be able to stay in his house for free, or he'll stay in his house and he'll have a deduction in the rent as a result of this loan. So that's a clear thing that he's getting from the borrower. The borrower is giving him the right to be in his house, or the right to be in his house for a deduction in the rent, as long as he didn't pay him the loan. So that's again called Ribas Ktsutza. Masha'inkin, if for example the Malveh, what he's getting for the loan is that he's going to get a right to use the field of the leva. So l'chura, using the field of the leva is also worth money. It's something people pay for. But on the other hand, using the field of the leva is lav dafka going to be advantageous for the Malveh. Because lapel, sometimes a person invests in a field, and lapel, it doesn't work out. Depends on weather, depends on many conditions, whether or not it'll taka be a revach for the person that has the field. So for a person to stay in someone's house, it's clearly a revach. Lapel, you're able to stay in that person's house, or you're able to rent out the house. In other words, it's something which the revach is clearly there. Masha'inkin, we're talking about staying in someone's field. If that's the ribis, so that doesn't go into the gather of ribis ktsutza. And the din is that by ribis ktsutza, ribis deiraisa is yetze b'dayonim, which means once you gave the ribis, you could go, the leva could go and mon the ribis back from the malva. Masha'inkin ribis, which is not ktsutza, is only yetze b'dayonim. We'll learn the pratim over here. Perek shishi. Hamalveh is chaveri sela b'chamisha dinim. He makes up, he's giving him a sela, and he's going to pay him chamisha dinim. A sela is 4 dinim. Oy sosayim chitim. He gave him sosayim, and he made up that he's going to give him back sholish and give him back 3 chitim. Oy, he made up sela b'sela. He's going to pay him back a sela, but plus a saw, plus payers, which is again the ribus ktsutza, the saw. Oy sholish soim b'sholish soim. So he made up, he's going to give him back the same amount of payers, above a dinner, but he's going to give him back a dinner. Klolish shel davar, kol halva b'teisvis kolshu. He gave him a loan, and there was an addition to the loan. He has, besides paying back the loan, he has to give him back something else. So that's harezu riba shel teira. That goes into the together riba shel teira, and the yetzer b'dayonim. And lepel, if the leva gave it to the malva, so then the leva could go and mon b'dayonim to take it back from the malva. V'chein hamalves chavere v'hisni me sheyoder b'chatzeri chinam ad sheyazu alvos. So the deal was he wasn't taking something from him, but he has a right, the Malveh has a right to live in the dira of, or in the chotzer of the leva, b'chinam, achiyazu avose, oi, shesacher mimenu b'pachas, or even if it's not for free, but it's clearly he's being given a deduction in the price of the rent, the kotzer v'adavar, shepoiches le'min aschar, achiyazu avose. In other words, they made up, the price of the rent is kach v'kach, but until I give you back the loan, lepel, there's a deduction in the price of the rent. So that's clear. If he doesn't, if he gives him the rents at him, and there's no clarity that the deduction is because of the halva, Noskili is giving him a deduction, so then that's not ribus ktsutza. Masha'inkin over here is clear that he's saying as long as I still owe you the money, so you're going to have a deduction in the rent. So that's considered ribus ktsutza. The kotzav adavar he made up shepechus lemin aschar achayazu avasi. That goes into the together ribus ktsutza. Oi shemishkin miyodei mokim sheperesav mitzuyin beis alva. Gave him a mashkin. And what kind of mashkin? He gave him a mashkin of something which peresav mitzuyin. Peresav mitzuyin means that it's clear that it's the payers are there already. You know, the ability to live in the house is already there, as opposed to a field where the field, the pshat is you hope to get the payers from the field. The pashtus, you'll get it, but the payers still have to grow. Masha'inki, when you live in a house, the fact that you could live in a house, that's already motzui when you're giving the house. The house, you don't have to worry that maybe the house, as it is something which is peresa mitzuyin. The peresa of the house is the ability to live there. Nachamal, Shemishkin biyadi mokim, sheperesa mitzuyin, the peresa are already motzui beis alvok. He gave Shemishkin chatzere, he gave him a mashkin of a chatzer, al menash yodi bebechinam, that he shall live there bechinam. So the din is harezu riba shel teira v'yetze b'dayonim. So you have to explain the chiluk before the Rambam said also hisne imei sheyodi b'chatzere chinam. And here the Rambam is saying that his mishkan chatzeri al nashiyad bebechina, but there's a difference. Before we're talking about he's giving him the ability to live there. In other words, he lent him money, and he says you could be yoder b'chatzeri chinam. He's not giving him the chotzer as a mashkin. He's giving him the chotzer. He's telling him you could live here. So that living here, that is the ribus. Masha'inkin over here, he's giving him the chotzer as a mashkin. So l'chura, there's a kinyan in the chotzer. We'll soon learn behemshech that b'negei asada, if the mashkin is a sada, so if he gives it to him as a mashkin, so since ein peres of mitzuyin, so it's takanat ribus ktsutza. Masha'inkin, if he gives him the ability to eat from the field, or to use the field, so that goes into together ribus ktsutza. We'll learn behemshah, but I'll call upon him. There is a case where he's malvis chaverei, and the deal is yodem chatzeri chinam. He's not giving him the chatzar as a mashkin, but he's saying you could live here the vayla. And then there's another situation where he's giving him the chatzar as a mashkin. So the Churi could say, listen, it's a mashkin already, so I have a chatzar. So he didn't give me any ribis, I just have it as a mashkin. And now I'm going to live in the field. So the answer is no. In the chatzar, the answer is no. Because since he gave him as a mashkin with the ability to live there, and the peres of a mitzuyin, so that in itself is ribis. That in itself is ribis. So Nachamal, Shemishkin biyadi mokim, sheperes of mitzuyin beis alva, Shemishkin chatzeri al menash yodi bebechinam arezu riba shel teira v'yetze b'dayan. V'chein, another case. Hamoicher. So meanwhile we had the cases clearly he gave him something and they made up to give him back more, or over here he gave him something he made up to be able to live in the chutzner, or he's giving him a deduction, a clear deduction of the chutzner as long as the halva is there, or he gave him a chutzner as a mashkin. That's also called ribus ktsutz. V'chein hamoicher soder e chutzner basmachta. Person sells a soder or a chotzer, and it's basmachta. Basmachta means you're not really, the seller is not really expecting to sell. He's selling only on a certain condition, and he's hoping that condition won't be fulfilled. The seller gave the buyer, the buyer gave the seller money, and he gave it to him as a loan. Now, Lepeil, as we're going to learn Behemshech, Nachamal. So Reuven gives Shimon money as a loan, and he makes up with Shimon that if you return this money within 3 years, so fine. Masha'inkin, if you don't return the money within 3 years, this field is going to become mine. Now, Lepeil, the seller, which is the recipient of the money, hopes to pay back the money before the 3 years, and therefore he's not going to really be selling it. So he really has no intention of selling it. So this sale was called an asmachta, and it's not really a sale. Asmachta is leikanya. So Lepil, now the money that the buyer or the person that lent the money was hoping to be a buyer gave, really was giving it without a sale. Whereas normally when you give money, so you buy something, so Pshat is I'm giving you money, the Tur Kenyan, and I'm buying something from you. But if I'm giving you money to buy something from you, which I really can't buy from you because the whole buying from you is only the B'chinas Asmachta, so therefore that money goes into a gather of halva. That money becomes transformed from a mois of a kinyan to a mois of alva. Now, if that mois is mois of alva, and I'm going and eating the peiros of the field, so I'm eating the peiros of the field. Why am I eating the peiros of the field? Because my money, which I gave you as a halva, so the vayla, I'm eating the peiros of the field, and then eventually you're going to return to me the money. So it's really a loan, and I'm eating the peiros of the field. So that's also called ribis, which is yoytze b'dayanim. That's this din over here. V'chein. Hamoicher soda e chotzer basmachta. A person sells a soda or a chotzer basmachta, and he received money for it. The moicher received money for it, but it's only asmachta with the intent of he's hoping not to really have to sell it. Is hail v'lei kona haguf. He's really not kona the goof of the soda or the peiros or the chotzer. is arikola perish achal, all the perish which the person that wants to be the buyer, which is really the lender, all the perish that he ate is a ribis. And therefore, he has to be machzer that ribis. So over here, the Rambam is giving this a din when a person sells something, and lepeil is asmachta. So the money they received is really a loan. So the benefits that the buyer, the person that wants to be the buyer, which is really the lender, is getting is ribis. So he has to be machzer that ribis. That the asmachta is one case where you're not really being koina. And the other case where you're not being koina kinyan gomer mitchila, shehu magzer saperis. So the person that made this kinyan and lepel is not being koina kinyan gomer. So mele sofkos of the money that he's getting, that he gave was a halva. So mele the payers that he ate is a payers b'pchinas ribis. Shehu magzer saperis. B'pnei shem achel saperis. If he'll eat the payers, so that's harezu ribishal teira. That's considered ribishal teira. Because lepel there was no sale. If there was no sale, so there was a loan, and if it's a loan, so the payers that he's getting is ribishal teira. V'chol dover. Now the Ram says v'chol hu adin l'chol mishal ikoner kinyan gomer mitchila. So he wasn't koina kinyan gomer. He didn't really have a kinyan in this karka. If he would have had a kinyan in the karka, so then it wouldn't have been ribis gomer. Mashenkin he had no kinyan in the karka, so magzer is haperes. Neshemachel is haperes. Harezu ribishal teira. V'chol dover shu osum shu ribis chutz mielo. Except for the cases that he mentioned till now. There's the cases where he gave money and clearly he's going to get back either extra money or extra payers. Or he gave payers and he's going to get back either extra payers or extra money. Or he gave money and he's going to get back the fact to be dar b'chatzeri. Or to be able to have the right to be dar b'chatzeri, even to have the right to be dar b'chatzeri. Or when he bought something in Eifan of Asmachta and Lepel now he's eating the payers. So all of these things have a din of Riba Shel Teira. Any other ribis other than the cases that the Rambam just mentioned, hareyu osum midavreim. They're only osum midrabanan. Gzeira shema yove l'riba shel teira. There's a gzeira. Maybe if you'll do the other things, you'll come l'riba shel teira. That's why the rabbanon will gezer. V'hu nikra avak ribis, and that's ve'eni yetze b'dayon. Halacha beis hamalves chaverei liyimshich avdei k'dei sheyase be'molacha afal pi she'eved yeshiv u'batel. The din is that if a person has an eved, and the eved is yeshiv u'batel, and someone else goes ahead and schleps this eved and works with him, so if lepel this eved is working and he goes ahead and is mevatel memlachte, so you chayv and sheves. You chayv because you were mevatel the eved memlacha. Masha'in kain over here the eved was yeshiv u'batel, so the din is you're not mechuyev to pay anything to the yodin. You're not mechuyev to pay anything to the yodin. So, but over here there's a chidush that since we're dealing with a Malveh V'Loveh, so over here there's extra din because lepel by using this eved you're taking something from the leva beyond the loan. In other words, you lent him money, he's going to pay you back the money, and the vile you're taking something more from him. So therefore there's an extra din. Mitzad hilchas ribis. It's not ribis deiraisa, but mitzad hilchas ribis is le'im shechavdei kedei sheyase be'melacha afal pi she'eved yeshiv u'batel v'chein, and also v'le'yoder b'chatzei chinam. The din is that if a person lives in someone's chutzner, and that person's chutzner is a chutzner which is l'kaim lager, it's not something which he rents out normally, and it's not. It's from mele, so that chutzner. So when you live in that chutzner, even though you're a person that would normally rent a place to live, you wouldn't be living in a place without. You would normally rent a place if you wouldn't find a place to live. But since this place is not made to rent, so therefore, even though you were a nana, but since he was a lei chutzner, you don't owe him any money. That's normally the din. So if you're dar b'chatzer chaveri shlei midaite, so you're a nana and he's a chasser. Well, you're a nana because you're a person that normally would rent. So there, and nevertheless, you don't have to pay because then nana is a chasser. Now over here, there's an extra din that's by you being nana from this person. So even though mitzad regular dinim, you don't have to pay him money. But over here, if you're being nana from him and you're not paying him, so it comes out you're getting ribis because he's the leva. So therefore, you should pay him. You should pay him. You pay him. Let's see the shamayim. So normally, be'emes, once you took the ribis of a ribis, which is a ribis derabanan, you don't have to pay it back. It's eni yetze b'dayonim. But on the other end, over here, you didn't really take it yet because lepel you could be paying for it. You could be paying it lots of shamayim. There's no chiyuv to pay it, but there's a musik of paying it because lepel you were nana from him. So we're saying go pay him back. So it'll come out that Kili, you never took ribis. It's not pshat, you took the ribis and they're taking it back from you. You never took ribas because you paid for it. That's this din. Nachamo. Hamalvus chaveda liyimshech avdei kedeshiyasa b'melacha afal pi she'eved yeshiv v'batel. That's the number one. And also v'liyoder b'chatzei rechinam afal pi she'ein hachotzer asuya l'schar ve'ein derech bal hachotzer lahaskir. But nevertheless, since the Mishnah says, since you're a person that would normally rent, so therefore you're being nana from him, so therefore you shouldn't do that. Ve'im lei halalei, and if you're not going to pay him for it, is harezu avak ribas. Lefishlei hisne ime she'alvei v'yoder b'chatzeri. You know, if there would have been a t'nai that you could live in my chatzeri chinam, even though it's a chotzer, which is eini asuya l'schar, that would definitely be ribas ktsutza, like we learned before. Masha'enkin over here, since it was lei hisne that he's going to live there, so therefore it's not ribas ktsutza. But on the other end, in order not to have even avak ribas, so the eitzah is you should pay for it. You're living there, even though when you live there, you don't have to end up paying. The person can mun from you the money, but lepel, by you living there, there's a avak ribas. Masha'enkin, if you're going to pay him, so then it takes away the idea of avak ribas. Now lefichach, im adayin lehir zelecheva. If lepel, the leiva still owes the money to the malva. And now lepel, this malva went ahead and they lived in the chotzer of the leiva. Now the leiva says, listen, you lived in my chotzer, so therefore I want to take or deduct the amount of money that you lived in my chotzer from the chayv. Is azay. Im hoya aschar keneged achayv. In other words, the amount of money that he would really have to owe him for living in the chotzer. Again, for normal hilchas owing, he wouldn't owe him. The only reason why over here we're saying he should owe him is because it has a din of ribis. Mitzad, a regular din, that's why it's not so easy to understand this halacha. There's a regular din of ador b'chotzer chaveri shlemi daitei, since he's a zenan of a zeli chotzer, he doesn't have to pay for it. Now, the only reason why over here he should pay for it, in order that it shouldn't be avak ribis, because by living there and not paying for it, it's a gather of avak ribis. Now, lepel, this person lived there and he didn't pay for it. So l'chura, the pashtus advarim is good. He should pay for it in order not to be ever an avak ribis. But on the other end, l'chura, the bala chotzer, which is the leiva, can't mon it from him. And the Rambam is passing the yikud. That's a hard thing to understand over here. The fichach im adayin lehirze lecheve. If the leiva didn't really return the chev now a ball in nakes schar hachotzer shedorba min hachev. Now he wants to deduct the amount of money that's for the schar hachotzer that this malva lived there from the chev. Is azay. Im hoya schar keneged hachev. If the schar was keneged hachev, in other words, if he start deducting, so it's going to come out that he's not paying anything, is einim enakle akel. He doesn't take off all of it. Only according to the assessment of the dayanim. If you're going to completely be masalik from him, is hazarezek mishet heitzeis b'dayanim avak ribis and he heitzeis b'dayanim. In other words, if he doesn't pay for it, so what happened over here? He took avak ribis. He was dor b'chotzer chaveri. He was nana from chotzer chaveri shalei midaitei. So he doesn't owe the leiva money mitzad hilchas chirus, but he owes him l'chura. He shouldn't be doing this mitzad avak ribis. Now, if you're asking for that money back, and you say, listen, since there was avak ribis, so Mela, I want that money back. So you're moneying avak ribis. You're not allowed to. So therefore, you can't go ahead and deduct all of this money from the chayv and say the chayv is off because lepeil you owe me that money. So that you can't do. But the question is, why could you deduct part of the chayv? L'chura, Ruvain lent Shimon $100. Now, Lepel, Ruvain lived in that chotzer, and Lepel, for living in that chotzer, the schar for that chotzer should have been $50. Ruvain, mitzad hilchis, regular dinim without ribis, Ruvain is not mechuyev to Shimon the $50. Why? Because it's zenan of zeli chotzer. The only reason for Ruvain to pay that $50 is in order, because Lefi said it's going to come out that it was avak ribis, the fact that he lived there. That's why Reuven should pay it. So Reuven should have to pay it. But if Reuven doesn't pay it, now Shimon owes Reuven the money. Shimon owes Reuven the money. So l'chura Shimon has to pay Reuven the money. But the Ma'aseh says, since Shimon, in other words, you don't take him. In other words, normally, if Reuven, if let's say Reuven, Shimon owes Reuven money, and Shimon paid Reuven the money, and now Reuven also has the avak ribis. And now the question is for Shimon to ask for the avak ribis back. So that you can't do because you're not meisei b'dayanim. But over here, since the Leiva still owes the Malveh money, so he's not really being moitzi the avak ribis from Dayanim, because Lepel, he's saying, listen, be'emes mitzad hilchas avak ribis, you should be paying me. Mitzad hilchas avak ribis, if you're going to pay me, so it comes out you never took avak ribis. But on the other hand, if I'm going to deduct all the money, so it comes out that I'm being moitzi b'Dayanim. So therefore, the thing is, if there's only part of the money, so in other words, the Leiva owes the Malveh $100. And now the Malveh lived in this field for $50. So then he pays him back $50. And he says, listen, I'm paying you back $50 because you shouldn't be taking avak ribis. So by not taking avak ribis, how does that be? By me giving you only $50. So maybe you're paying me the $50. If I'm going to not pay you anything, so then it's going to come out that I'm being moitzi b'dayon. You have to understand that if I don't pay you anything, so then it's going to come out that it's being yoitzi b'dayonim the avak ribis. It's not the pshas, you're not paying the avak ribis. You're not taking the avak ribis. Rather, it's being yoitzi b'dayonim, and therefore that wouldn't be permissible. It needs further explanation, but that's the havonas hadvar. Halachi gimel. Hoyru rabbeisai shamalves chaverei ula'acher zman tova chevei. And now v'omer lehaleva dur b'chatzeri ad she'achzer lechachevach. So in other words, they didn't make up the dur b'chatzeri b'shas the original alva. B'shas the original alva, there was just a deal. The Malveh gave the Leiva the money. Leiva has to pay him back. But now, when it comes the time for the piroin achev, and the Leiva doesn't have the money, so here the Leiva tells the Malveh dur b'chatzeri ad she'achzer lechachevach. So the Rambam paskins harezu avak ribis. So the Isser of Ribis Ksutza is only B'Shas Halva Mamish. And other Rishonim, a lot of Rishonim argue, Shulchan Aruch brought down different, that Lepel, since Lepel right now is the time of payment, and Lepel they're making up a Ribis in order to extend the loan, to let him have the loan further, so that goes also to the gather of Ribis Ksutza, and the Nafkamina is whether it's Yetzer B'Dayon. Halacha Dalet. Hamalveh is chaveri al asoda, va'omerle imle tarzeli mikan vat sholish shonim harei shali. Sedin is harezu leikonim mipnei she'yisa asmachta. Lefichoch menake kol ha'peiris she'ochel mipnei she'uri b'shel teira. Nochamo. Reuven gave Shimon $1,000, and he told Shimon Azay that if you don't pay me back these $1,000 within these 3 years, next 3 years, so the field is mine. And Lepel he didn't pay him back. And the violet during those 3 years, Reuven was eating the peiros. So the din is Lepel, the sale is not a sale because it's a smachta. Shimon really had no intention of selling Reuven the field. He was hoping to be able to give him back the money. So Memela, so it was really not a sale. It was a smachta likanya. If it's not a sale, so what was the money? What was this money that Reuven gave to Shimon? The money that Reuven gave to Shimon was a halva. It wasn't a kinyan. It was a halva. And Memela, what's the peiros that Reuven was eating during those 3 years? The peiros that Reuven was eating those 3 years was ribis. So Mela it has a din of ribis, and the Ram holds it's ribis minatera. That's called ribis minatera, and therefore it's chayze b'dayonim. Others argue. The Ravid argues. He says it's not ribis ksutza, which is ribis minatera, but Al Koparim the Ram holds, and the Ram mentioned it before. And Allah, when he mentioned all the cases of what's yotze b'dayonim that's considered the ribis minatera. So one of these things is when you buy something basmachta, and lepel the sale is not a sale, so it comes out the money you gave was a loan. So Mela, the peiros that you ate is beprinas ribis. That's this din. Nochamo. Malvus chaveira lasoda v'omerle imli tazeli mikan vat sholish shonim is harei hishali. That was what the person that gave the money, the Malveh tells the Leiva. So the din is harei zelikana. The Malveh is not kain of the field. B'pnei she'yasmachta. And since he's not kain of the field, lefichach menake kol ha'peiros she'ochel. All the peiros which the Malveh ate is deducted from the amount of money that the Leiva owes to the Malveh. It's a riba shel, and therefore it's yetzer b'dayonim. He can deduct it from what he owes to the Malveh. If the meicher says to the buyer, in those Reuven says to the Levi, the one that received the money. The meicher is the one that received the money that had the field. He tells to the one that gave him the money, if I don't return you the money within the next 3 years, you could be kind of ready from now. So then, if Lepel he gave him the money, is only peiros because it wasn't his. It was only knei esam yachshav if I don't bring you back this money. If Lepel he paid him the money after 3 years, So it comes out that the person that gave him the money, the Reuven which gave Shimon the money, was koinit mi'achshav right away from the Shas. The sinas hamois is ariyakol ha'peiros lekech. The payers belong to the lekech, because since he told him kneis mi'achshav, so it takes off the din of asmachta lekanya. Because lepel, the fact that he said mi'achshav means that he's gemiras das to be makna, and therefore the deal is a deal. So if lepel he didn't bring back the money within 3 years, so the kinyan was a kinyan, and if the kinyan was a kinyan, if the kinyan is mi'achshav, so kamuvan, the person that has the field and owned the field from then, the payers are his. Halacha hey, hamoicher bayis yisod. Someone sells a house or a field. V'omar hamoicher lekech. The seller sells to the buyer that I'm taka selling you a field because right now I need money, so therefore I'm selling you a field. But when I have money, I want to have the right to be able to buy back the field. So basically, what's happening is that's not really a sale. Whereas if the lekeach wants that, if the moicher wants to have the right to be able to buy back the field, so basically he bought the field, he didn't really buy the field, it became his field. It's basically what really happened is that the buyer gave the seller money, and the vayla, the buyer is using the field, and then when the seller will have money and pay back the buyer, so then the field will go back to him. So we're calling it a sale. We're saying, I'm selling it to you and I'm going to buy it back from you. But in reality, what's happening is that he's borrowing the money, and then he's going to pay back the money, and the vayla, he's going to have the field. That's what's really happening. So therefore, that's not really called a sale, and therefore it's called ribis. Nacham. Halacha. Hamecher bayis isod. Someone sells a house or a field, and the seller says, "V'amar hamecher l'lekeach l'ksheyiu l'mois." When I get money, it's taz l'karkoi. The deal is that you should have to sell me back the field. Is the din is late kana? There was no real kinyan, and therefore v'chol ha'peiros she'achal, all the peiros that he ate was ribis ktsutza. Umitzi neisa b'dayonim. You could be moitzi this ribis ktsutza b'dayonim. Aval amalei. That's talking about if the seller said this deal. The buyer said, I'm buying this field from you. And Ba'emes, it's mine. I don't have to really sell it back to you. It's a full sale. The money is not halva. The money is money of kinyan. I'm telling you that when you have money, I know you're only selling it because you need the money. When you have the money, I'll return to you this karka. So that's mutter. And because lepel, he ate lepel since it was a real sale, so Mamela, the payers were his. He bought it. He ate payers from his own field. And Lepel, he's willing to go ahead and sell it. It was his own initiative that he went ahead and said that he's willing to sell it if the person has money. Halacha Vav, Machale Sasoda. Someone sells a field, and V'nosan mixes Hadam. And Lepel, the buyer, only gave some of the money. He didn't give all the money for the field. Now the question is, what's the deal right now? If the mecher says, Knei kishir ma yisecha. In other words, you gave me half of the money for this field, so half of the field belongs to you. In other words, according to how much money, the percentage of the money that you owe me, that's the percentage of the field that you own. So the din is, Kol echad mishneim echel peiros kishir ma yisef. So the buyer owns a certain percentage of the field, the percentage, the same percentage as the money is the percentage of the entire sale, and that's the payers that he eats. And the seller owns the other part of the field, and Mamela he eats the payers of that part of the field. Now, however, Amar hamoichel l'lekech, shetavi shar hamois. Right now, you gave me money, but when you're going to bring me the rest of the money, is then tikne miachshav. Now, then you're going to this field is going to become yours miachshav. In other words, you gave me money for the field. I'm willing to sell you the field right now, but only on the condition that when you bring me the rest of the money, then it's going to come out l'mafreya that this field is yours me'achshav. So Lepel, right now, we're not really sure whose field it is. Because Lepel, if he ends up giving him the money, so it comes out l'mafreya was the buyer's field. If he ends up not giving him the money, so it's going to come out l'mafreya that it's the meicher's field. Now Lepel, if any of them is going to eat from the peiros, it's going to be a gather of ribis. Why ribis? Because Lepel, let's say if the seller eats the peiros, so the seller is eating the peiros, but l'chura, if later on it's going to come out that the buyer is going to bring the rest of the money, so it's going to come out l'mafreya was the buyer's field. So it was the buyer's field. So why did the seller eat the peiros? He ate the peiros because since the buyer owed him money, In other words, he bought it l'mafreya, but lepel he owed him the money. So how did he buy it l'mafreya? So Kila, like he owed him money. For that money that he owed him, that's why the seller was eating the peiros. So that's bribus. Al derech fakert, if the buyer never ends up giving the field, so mele it comes out to be the seller's field, and lepel the buyer was eating the peiros. The question: why was the buyer eating the peiros? The answer is because since part of that money was by the seller, and lepel that money that was by the seller wasn't really money of a kinyan because l'maltzkani never brought the rest of the money, so that money went back to him. So it was b'pchinas halva, and therefore, since it was b'pchinas halva, so therefore he was able to eat the peiros. So memela, so therefore, either way, there's a problem of ribis, and therefore none of them can eat the peiros until it was nizbar who really owns the field, the mafreya, and that person that owns the field, the mafreya, he eats the peiros. Because if the other person will eat the peiros, so it'll come out that he's eating the peiros mitzad the money, either the money that he owed him or the money that he had that he has to give back. Nachamal. Amar ha-meichel l'lekech, shetovel ish'ar ha-mois, is tikdim yachshav. Is shneim asurim lechel ha-peiros miyad. So at this point in time, they're both also to eat the peiros. Why? Ha-meicher asur, the meicher is asur, because Shem miyavi ha-lekech sh'ar ha-mois. Maybe the buyer will end up bringing the rest of the mois. V'nim tzah sodah shalei. So why did the meicher eichel the peiros? The meicher was eichel ha-peiros b'shvil ha-mois shenishalu eitz ha-lekech, because the lekech still owed him money. So therefore, that gave the meicher the right to eat the peiros. So it's really like he's eating the peiros because of the loan, which ultimately the lekech gave him the money. V'chein ha-lekech asur, why? Because Shem yavi. Maybe it's going to end up that he's not bringing the money. And v'nimtza, why did he eat the peiros? L'churi le yavi. So really, it's the meicher's field because he never bought it. Because sha'achal b'shul mixes ha-moish yesh leitz ha-meicher. Because since some of the money he gave to the meicher, so that money, which didn't end up being money of a kinyan, but it ended up being was the money of a loan, and that gave the lekeh the right to the peiros. L'fichov, therefore, neither of them eat the peiros. L'fichov manichnus ha-peiros ayidei sholish ad sheyinosnu le'echad mem. Then eventually, when we know who actually owned this field, if he brought him the money, so it comes that it was his field, the mafreya. If he didn't bring the money, so we find that it was the meicher's field, the mafreya. So Mela comes out that the peiros belonged to the person that it was his field, the mafreya. Amalei ha-meicher l'kshetov ishar ha-mois tikna. So the leker gave him some of the money, and the meicher told him, when you'll bring the rest of the money, that's when you'll be kind of the field. There's the value, you don't own the field at all. So the din is harei ha-meicher eichel ha-peiros ad sheyavei lekech, because lepel the field belongs to the meicher. Now v'im ochel ha-lekech is the lekech did eat. So lepel the lekech really has no right to eat. But if the lekech is eating, what would be the avana? Why he's eating? Because since some of the money was given already to the meicher, so it's like a loan. So because of that loan, the lekech is eating. So v'mela v'im ochel ha-lekech mitzim imenu. You're mitzvah him that money because that money has a din of ribis. You're mitzvah him that peiros. Now, Amalei ha-meicher faket, Amalei ha-meicher knei mi'achshav. You buy right away, u'sh'ar ha-mois harin chayvetz lecha, and this field is already yours, is harei lekech eichel ha-peiros, because it's already clear that the lekech owns the field. V'im ochel ha-meicher, so why is the meicher eating? L'chura, the meicher has no right to eat, because it's not his, so the pashtus would be because since the lekech owes him the money. So again it would be ribis. So meila, mocher ha-meicher is mitziyim mimenu kol mashachal. Now this lepel is a din of mitziyim mimenu. The question is, mitzim iman because it's gezel, that would be l'chura the pashtus because it's gezel. He had no right to eat it. He had no right to eat it. But if you say he had a right to eat it, so l'chura you're taking, there was ageret that he should eat it, so then it would be a ribis. The question is this called ribis ktsutza? From the Rambam is coming out that mitzim iman has a din of ribis ktsutza. Halacha zayin. Heiru rabbeisai shamalves chaverei umishkele sodeu almanas sheyochel kol periseh kol yemei hamashkoino. Is afal pisha in menakali klum harezu avak ribis ve'ena yetze b'dayon. Now we learned before that if a person lends someone money and the other person, the borrower, gives the lender a chotzer as a mashkin, and the lender could use the chotzer, so that's considered ribis ktsutza and it's yetze b'dayon. Here the Rambam is saying, we mentioned it already, that there's a difference between a chotzer which periseh mitzuyin as opposed to a soda which ain't periseh mitzuyin. Because if I give you if the borrower gives the lender a chotzer, so he clearly gave him something which is there, which that person could use. There's the ability to use this chotzer, and that periseh is considered mitzuyin, and therefore it's considered ribus ktsutza. Masha'inka, when you give a person a field, So the field has a potential. You could go ahead and work on the field and have payers from the field, and you could go ahead and work on the field and lose from the field because you'll invest into the field and the field won't produce payers. So since it's not the payers aren't 100% that they're not there yet, and you're not sure that they're going to come, so therefore that doesn't go into the gather of ribis ktsutza, that goes into the gather of avak ribis. That's this din. Nochamal. Heirer Rabbeis. Shamal v'schaverei umishkan lisadeu al menashe yechol kol periseo kol yemei mashkena. Afal pi she'eini menakal klum. He's not going to deduct anything from the loan. Is arezu avak ribis. That goes into the gather of avak ribis. Ve'eini yetze b'dayonim. Why she'eina memashken asasod deim al memashken chatzeri. By mashken chatzeri we learned that that's considered ribis ktsutza. Here we're saying that a memashken soda doesn't have a din of ribis ktsutza. Why? Because it's not different. Shari ain't besod the peiris mitzuyin beis halva. While he's lending him the money and he's taking from him the soda, there's no peiris mitzuyin. Ve'efshe she'arvia v'yusham peiris, and ve'efshe she'yafsid b'zirosim v'advidasa. So therefore, since it's not clear, it's not mamish 100% that he's going to have anything from the soda, so therefore it doesn't go into a gather ribis ktsutza. Leficha, it's only considered avak ribis. That's this din number one. So when a person gives a mashkin, the loive gives the malva a mashkin, and lepel the malva is using the field the mashkin. So the din is that that's considered avak ribis and not ribis ktsutza. Now we learned before that if a person takes a field in the eifin of asmachta, and he ate from the payers of those field, that field is ribis ktsutza. That payers that he ate is ribis ktsutza. Let's go again. Reuven gave Shimon $1,000, and he made up with him that if he doesn't pay him the $1,000 within the 3 years, so memela, so it's going to come out that the field is his. This field is his. And the viola during those 3 years, Reuven was eating the payers of that field. So we learned before that lepel Reuven didn't buy that field. That's not considered really a kinyan because it's machta lekanya. So memela, the money that Reuven gave Shimon was really halva. And so memela it comes out that the payers that Reuven ate from Shimon's field is considered ribis, and that's called ribis ktsutza. And therefore it's yetze b'dayon. So l'chura, over there we said that when you took the field by basmachta, so since it's not really a kinyan, so it comes out halva, now when you go and eat the payers, you have to give it back because it's ribis ktsutza. Over here you gave a clear halva, you didn't say, there was no asmachta, you gave a clear halva, and you took the soda as a mashkin, and lepel, you're eating the pears, and we're saying that it's only avak ribis and it's not yetzer b'dayon. What's the difference? So in that, the Rambam is going to say the difference is that over there, by the case of the asmachta, you ate the pears. You didn't speak about the field. You spoke about the pears. The pears were ribis ktsutza. The pears was something that you ate, and lepel, you were eating. He never gave you the field as a mashke. He told you could eat the pears of the field. And since you can eat the payers of the field, so those payers are dover matzui, and therefore it's something there, and therefore it's considered ribis ktsutza and it's yetzer b'dayon. We said this, and not everyone agrees that it's ribis ktsutza, but according to the Rambam, it's called ribis ktsutza. Over here, he gave him the field as a mashkin. He didn't give him the payers; he gave him the field as a mashkin. So since he gave him the field as a mashkin, since lepel, this field is not definitely there's no perisem mitzuyin. So that's not called ribis ktsutza. Elamai, later on, he's going to eat the payers. He's eating the payers from the field that he already had a kinyan payers in it. Whereas the fact that he has a field which has a kinyan payers, that's not considered ribis ktsutza. The fact that he ate the payers is also not called ribis ktsutza because he's not eating now the payers from the loiva. He's eating the payers from the mashkin, which the mashkin he already has. That's l'chura the havanas advarim v'chein. Which we learned before that when you're macher basmachta and you eat the payers, so it's yetzer b'dayon. But hamashkein is not similar. Why? Asmachta, when a person is meicher basmachta, lei gomer v'hikneu. He wasn't maknim anything. He wasn't maknim not the guf leguf and not the guf of payers. But when someone is memashkin a field, is gomer v'hikneu guf zelu peresav. He was maknim the guf leperesav. So the fact that he took the guf leperesav, that's not considered ribis ktsutza because lepel it's lav dafka that there's going to be peres. And the fact that he's eating the peres is also not considered ribis because lepel is not taking the peres from the leva, he's taking the peres from the guf that he has already leperesav. Yerom and Talmud. This seems to be from the Talmud. Shamashkena avak ribis. There's in Gemara it says clearly that mashkena has a din of avak ribis, and the Rambam saying the only time that you could say that a mashkin has a din of avak ribis, ela b'mish mashkin sodeu k'mei she'er rabbeisa. There's a person that's mashkin chatzerei, so the Rambam said before, that's considered ribis ksutza, not avak ribis. Masha'eng mashkin sodeu, that has a din of avak ribis. Nimtzas lomet, so basically we come out from this, shesholish mashkenasin. There's three types of mashkin. There's mashkena she'iribis ksutza, and there's a mashkena she'avak ribis, and then there's mashkena hamuteres ketzad. Mishkan leimokim shepiresav mitzuyin toder. He gave him a place he gave him a mashkin, a piresav mitzuyin toder, king a chotzer, a merchetz, a chanus, and lepel v'achal periseim. So that's the din of zarein ribis ksutza. That's considered ribis ksutza because the peiros are mitzuyin. So therefore, he gave him a dover, something that's a clear thing. Nishkele sodu kiyetzabei ubo shom peiros v'achlan is a rezuk avak ribis. That goes in together with avak ribis. V'chein, another case, in mishkin chatzeri kiyetzabei benikoy. In other words, he was mashkin. He gave him the chotzer as a mashkin. But Lepel, he didn't say that he could live there b'chinam. He says he's going to deduct a certain amount of money each year. And Lepel, that deduction is really a lot less. In other words, Bam is this chotzer is normally to rent this chotzer would cost $1,000 a year. And Lepel, he's only deducting $1 a year. So it's obviously it's ribis, but Lepel, they didn't make up ribis. So Mele v'chein mishkin chatzeru kiyetze b'benikoy. So that's called avak ribis. That's called avak ribis. Because nikui is avak ribis. Now we learned before nikui when a person l'mashal says that he's going to take off part of the schirus, and the Rambam said before that that's considered ribis ksutza. It's different. Over here he's giving him a mashkin. He's saying, listen, you have this mashkin for this amount of years, and lepeil we're going to deduct this and this amount of money for each year. So Lepel, the pashtus advarim is that it's an union of a rental. So we really know that it's not a regular rental. It's only renting him for much less because it's ribis. But Lepel, the pashtus advarim, it's a rental. Over there, we were talking about a case where he's taka renting him a field and he's renting him a chutz, and he's telling him the be'emes, the price of this is this and this amount. But Lepel, till you pay me back the loan, you can deduct half of that price. Over there, that's ribis ksutza. That was the ribis ksutza in halacha aleph. Over here, we're talking about he didn't make up such a deal. He's giving him a field as a mashka, a chotzer as a mashka, and officially there is a payment for this chotzer. In other words, he's not giving him a mashkin. He's saying you can live there bechinam. I'm giving you as a mashkin, and there's a certain payment for the chotzer. So since there's a payment for the chotzer, so therefore that's considered avak ribis. Nochamol v'chein. In Mishkan Chatzeru Kietze Benikoy, that's avak ribis. However, Mishkan Sodeu Benikoy, if it was Mashkan Sodeu without Nikoy, that's considered also avak ribis. Masha'enke Mishkan Sodeu Benikoy is a reza mutter. Kietze do Nikoy. What does it mean on Nikoy? Shelvo Meodinim. He lent him Meodinim. Umishkan li behen Chatzeru Yosodeu, and the Levi gives to the Malveh his Chatzer Yisoda. V'amalei Malveh Areini Menakal Chamo Kesef B'chol Shona. B'schar kakazu k'dei she'yeh kol periseh shali. In other words, the Malveh tells to the Levi, listen, I have this field, I'm going to use the field, and will pay for every year that I use this field, I'm going to deduct one dinar. Now, the dinar is much less than what the field is worth. But Lepel, since the deal was that he's going to deduct a certain amount, so therefore that's not considered ribis ksutza. So if it's a chotzer, it takes away from being ribis ksutza. And if it's a sada, which lechatchila only avak ribis, so then it takes it away even from the din of avak ribis. So b'chotzer kiyetze be'asur, because Lepel is still considered avak ribis. In other words, if it wouldn't be benikois, it would be ribis deiraisa. So when it's benikois, it's considered ribis derabanan, it's avak ribis. B'sadu kiyetze, which even without nikoi, it would be considered avak ribis. So with nikoi, it's mutter. Halacha ches. Hoiru mikzas hagoinim, and the mikzas hagoinim is the rif. Shekol mashkena she'ein ba nikoi klal harei ribis ksutza. This is not like the Rambam that made a difference between a sod and a chotzer. That by a chotzer it's considered ribis ksutza, and by a sod, since it's ein perisem mitzuyin, it's not considered ribis ksutza. It's only avak ribis. They held that every mashkena she'ein ben nikui klal, whether a chotzer or a soda, is harezu ribis ksutza. V'leyordu le'emek hadover lahafrish ben soda l'chotzer u'lefichach niskashelem devri chachmei haTalmud. The Rambam said before that in the Talmud it says that there's a metzias of a mashkena which is only avak ribis, and v'chein heru. Shekol mashkena afilu b'nikui asura bein b'chotzer bein b'soda, which that's l'shitosim, because the Rambam holds that a nikui by a soda is mutter, because the soda even without nikui is only avak ribis. So with nikui it's not even avak ribis. But they hold that side by a soda and side by a chotzer it's ribis ksutza, it's ribis gomer. So memela nikui by both of them is avak ribis. So that hoyru shekol mashkena afilu b'nikui asura bein b'chotzer bein b'soda. And therefore, ve'ela mashkena muteres ela b'derech hazes. What would be a tzir of a mashkena muteres? Ketzad. Ken shehuvo meya dinim, he lent him meya dinim, umishkin lei behem bayis esoda, v'hisni imei. Sha'acher eser shonim, tachzer karka zula balech. So all of the elef dinner will be paid up through this karka. Is hareze muter lechel periseh kol eser hashonim, afilo yischor shava elef dinner b'chol shana. In other words, a person gave someone $1,000 up front, and that person gives him back a field or a house, and he says you can stay in this house and field for 10 years. And that's your payment. That is your payment for these $1,000. So memela, these $1,000 is not a loan. It's a schirus. A normal situation when there's a nikui the pshat is there's a loan, and be'emes you owe me the money. It's just that I'm deducting because I'm using this field or this house. Lepel, if I decide that I'm not going to use the field, I'm not going to use the house, so now I give it back to you, and now you continue owing me the money. You continue owing me the money. In other words, basically, it's a loan, and it's being deducted from the loan. Mashenkin over here, it's not a loan, because Lepel over here, he gave him $1,000, and he gave him back a house, and he said you can live in the house for 10 years. Lepel, the house, living there in 10 years, Be'emes is worth more than 100. He gave him $100, 100 dinner, and Lepel, living in the house for 10 years is worth more than 1,000. So Lepel, basically, he's giving him the value of 1,000 for the 100 that he got. Why is he giving him the value of 1,000 for the 100 that he got? Because he got the 100 up front. But Lepel, it wasn't done as a loan. It was done as a schirus. In other words, you're giving me 100 up front, and I'm giving you a house which is going to have the value of 1,000 over the time. So Lepel, there's no mention of a loan here. And therefore, that's considered a mashkena amuteres. V'chein im hisna bala soda imei, the bala soda, the owner of the field, who's masna shekol's man shiyovi limois, is yichashiv li eser b'chol shana. So in other words, you'll make a cheshbon that'll be eser b'chol shana, even though it's really much more than eser. And v'yisalkim iman is also a mutter. So again, so it's the lender, the borrower rather. The borrower, which is the Baal HaSoda, he's giving the Soder to the lender, and Lepel is telling him that Lepel, I want to have the right that whenever I bring you the money, I will deduct from how much I owe you, and then I'll give you the rest of the money. So that's also mutter. And v'chein, im hisna haleva, shekol zman, sheyirza, mechashev mashadorbe, he'll make a cheshbon, how much did the Malveh live in the house, and v'yazel ishar adam, and the Leva will return the rest of the money. V'yistalik, and the Malveh will leave. Is also a mutter. She'ein ze'ela k'schirus, because that's the pshat. This is a gather of schirus. So in other words, the pshat is you gave me money. The person that owned the house was given money. He was given money, and he's really like, so to speak, renting the house. He's renting the house, but on the other hand, he's renting the house with a deal that Lepel, he could get him out of this rental and give him back some of the money. Give him back some of the money that he gave him for a rental. So the point over here is that we're taking it out. It's not pshat, it's a loan. It's a loan. And Lepel, you're getting something for the loan. It's a rental. It's with an agreement in the rental that the Leva could stop the rental agreement. In other words, not the Leva, there's the Baal HaSoda or the Baal HaBayis, you rent the house for $1,000. You have the house for 10 years for $1,000. But on the other hand, I have a deal that if during those 10 years I come along and I want to give you back the money that you gave me and get you out of the house, in other words, take you out of the rental, so I'll tell you how much I'll deduct for each year, and the mail, and I'll give you back the rest of the money. So basically, it's kilo like I'm undoing the rental agreement rather than making it a loan, and that's mutter. The whole thing is only a rental. There's no loan involved. And the chol t'nai shebeschiras kaim k'mei shebiyanu. And therefore it's mutter.